Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and call this City Hall Conceptual Design Workshop of July 27th to order. We have one item on tonight's agenda, but it's certainly a lengthy conversation that needs to be had. So with that, I would like to ask for an approval of the agenda as it has been published. I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Mazon. Any comments or questions on the dais? Ask the motion on the floor. Seeing none, any public comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We're going to slide right into our conceptual design presentation, if that is the pleasure of staff. It's good to see you gentlemen here live. It was nice seeing you on the computer screen as well, but nothing like a live presentation.
Nothing like it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight we're having, I think it's our second workshop on the City Hall. We're in a phase that is conceptual master planning. So we went through the first year just getting an idea of what the city should be looking at, did some very preliminary planning. Commission authorized us to move to phase number 2, which is conceptual design. And so that's kind of two different concepts during conceptual design. One is conceptual design of the building and facilities, and we covered that in the first workshop. But during that workshop, kind of got enough feedback from the commission to realize that we have a lot of site issues, how it's all gonna fit and work on the city properties, incorporating the municipal building, incorporating Berry Park, 254th Street, whether it's going to be a parking lot at the Newberry cold storage or not. And so we asked our consultant, Skinner Vignall McLean, as our hired consultant. They'll be transitioning to Monarch Architectural Services. They're in that transition phase now. But so they agreed to come back and hold an additional workshop for the City Commission to really kind of focus and get feedback from the City Commission on what we would do with site plan. And then we plan a third workshop, not too far distant future, to kind of round out conceptual design of the facility. And we still like the direction this is going, the Commission, we put in next year's budget that we would move to final design, which is a much more extensive process. That would result in a set of blueprints, a set of construction plans, bidding documents, so we could build something. So with that, I'll turn it over to Skinner Vignall McLean. They can run us through this presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. And for the folks watching at home, as the manager said, this is our second workshop. And I know a lot of the folks watching at home, you want to get right into what is the expansion going to look like and what is the building going to look like. But for this workshop, what we're really looking at is an aerial view down of this whole campus and making sure we're not missing an opportunity to incorporate roads, parking lots, Berry Park, those kinds of things. So we've had lots of information over the past few weeks about our population growth and how that's stimulating the need for more employees. More employees stimulates the need for a bigger City Hall campus, and that's kind of why we're here today. So tonight is site plan. Tonight is, big broad brush, what can we fit here, those kinds of things. I just want anybody watching at home to know if you only want to tune in when we get to picking what the building will look like, tonight may not be your workshop, but we hope you stick with us. Sir, welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners and Mr. Mayor. I'd like to take a second to introduce myself. My name is Barnett Chenault, President of Monarch Design Group. A couple of my team members that will be popping in and out to help add layers to this conversation are Howard McLean and Eric Ehrenzeller. So with that, we'll dive into it. We're going to do a quick overview of why we're here. I know everyone's done that a few times, but the reason why I want to be specific about it is this really wouldn't be a fruitful workshop if we get too far into the weeds. It's really going to be about, this is where we want the boxes, this is where we want people to go flow through here, and so we want to make sure everyone's on the same page going into this. So next page, please. Three big things: introduction, the design narrative, and then the next steps moving forward from here. Next page, please. And one more page. I'm going to quickly go through some of this preliminary stuff. We've had several workshop meetings with you, not just this year and past years, to decide on, well, sorry, let me back up. We went through a series of different conversations and demonstrated that this current city campus would have enough space for us to invest our time and effort into developing the future city hall. This was this exercise that we underwent about a year ago, I believe, and everyone voted that this was the direction that they wanted to head in. Can you go to the next page, please? One of the bases for some of the things we're going to be talking about right now are a couple of plans that we know will be coming into fruition with the FDOT one-way pair design. We understand that the roadways, you're going to have basically two front porches or front entries that will be capable to forward-facing approaches to the building. And so some of the design concepts that we're working through are going to allow us to make the most advantage, take the most advantage of that. Included in that is the plan. It's marked up here as a potential for FDOT to use as parking, but I do believe that the ice house is going to remain, and we've documented it that way on the plans as we move through it. So next page, please. And then one more next page. So reviewing again, the goal is to create a consolidated city campus, create a new front door for the city hall, which will be on the north side of the building, or north side of the property. Keep the historic structures intact. Functions within City Hall could move, in Commissioner Chamber and support spaces will be expanded, and development of an identity and destination for the civic campus. Next page, please. A couple of the items that will be located on the plans as we move through here are some concepts that we want to demonstrate how they've been used successfully in other places. Going quickly through here, we'll talk about the potential use of a multimodal corridor, where that gives access to both pedestrians and vehicular traffic. We're all familiar with these, but some things I want to point out are UF campus uses these, St. George Street and St. Augustine, as well as Windward Streetscape in Miami, Florida. I think two of these most people are familiar with, UF campus and St. George Street. This use of this multi-mixed use of these roadway systems. These are important demonstrations of how this can be achieved so that we don't just dismiss a few options out there. I want to also point out the fact that there is a delineation between what is actually active roadway space or used for vehicle traffic and pedestrian use.
Can
So it kind of flows. Go
I
ahead.
pause you right there because we have a new commissioner who wasn't part of the first workshop, and one of the concerns that came out of the first workshop was what we're trying to create is a space here on this entire campus that could be utilized for downtown festivals, that could be places where people could eat at 1906, our sandwich shop in what will be the cold storage, and bring it out to a landscaped area on campus and eat under a tree or those kinds of things. We also don't want to lose our ability to have a drive-through option, so we want to make a safe campus for pedestrian traffic to walk around, but for a vehicle to get through. So that's why we're talking about multimodal corridors. How are we going to make sure that people that, when we all pack up and go home at 6, but there's a nighttime food truck rally right here, how can we make it safe for there to be that pedestrian traffic, but also the convenience, because I know everybody loves to just be able to drive through that drive-through and pay their bill or ask a question. So that's why we're talking about multimodal corridors and how to do that safely and attractively. Just want to make sure. Well, we haven't added that in yet, but that's going to be at the end of the presentation. All right, go ahead.
Thank you for that. Next page, please. In addition to the multimodal, some things that you might see come up are this mixed-use space of indoor-outdoor space where it's covered by potentially a breezeway arcade, and how that can communicate a different spatial environment on the site. So diving into the actual concepts, we have 3 of them prepared. Again, my team members will be popping up to assist me with adding layers of communication to this, but here are some, before we get to that, here are a couple things that are driving our conversation. We want to maintain a drive-through that's been communicated by staff, so we need to provide access for that. One important thing, though, is that with today's technology, the drive-through does not actually have to directly interface with the staff on the other side. You can send those to a different portion of the room, and you can communicate via a video monitor. Stormwater retention, there's a couple different ways that that can be achieved on site, but there are some that are cheaper, some that are more expensive, so we have to talk about those ramifications in the plan. Having a public entry and most likely a staff entry, those are two things that will come up, as well as outdoor gathering space that makes this common hub for downtown Newberry. And another thing that drives this conversation is where we'll actually be able to have curb cuts that make a connected approach and circulation approach to the FDOT right-of-ways. Again, I mentioned that the ice house we're planning on for this iteration, that it's going to remain as is with the property boundary in place, and so we'll have to make adjustments according to that. And then we also have a few opportunities to discuss of what it would be like if we use 254 as more alternate use to what it is today. So with that, can you go to the next page?
Hey, can you, well, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I was one ahead of you already. On this slide, was this the slide you were talking about? Did you think we were on this slide, or were you talking about the last one?
No, I was talking
Okay,
about the
then
last
go
one.
ahead.
This
Go
was
ahead.
this was preemptive, so you know which ones
I got
are
you.
some of the conversations that are coming this way. In this example, we've maintained the existing driveway and turned it into a multimodal pedestrian corridor, like we demonstrated before. So that would be utilized for mixed use with delineations for where pedestrians should be walking most of the time. That also maintains the current drive-through location for the new building. The new building is more positioned to the north and to the west to make use of that street frontage. The public entry it'll have a front facade facing the new First Avenue street. But what is also useful in this scenario, where you see the star, it can be connected via a breezeway to the existing structure, and that can be utilized for a staff entry. So this one is actually showing the phases of this project all the way built out. We're talking about doing a 2-story structure in this iteration, as well as having above ground parking just to the east of it. So it's hard to tell right now, but if you look at just where the 2-level building mass is on this one, everything to the right of that does not have to happen in phase 1. So this gives you a suitable plan for expansion on site while maintaining and matching the existing program that you have. So phased growth can be achieved this way. And there's a couple things you can do with this as well. It'll allow you to get first parking, excessive parking on the first floor, and then eventually second floor covered parking above. You can see that we're playing around with this concept of if you were to close down 254, and that would give you this added benefit of a park pavilion space that's currently being used for the farmer market festivals that you have on the weekends. It will also allow us for use of additional parking spaces.
So the 30 increased parking spaces is this model here. That's overall between city parking lot and the parking lot by the municipal building?
Yes.
This iteration gives us 30 additional ones.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me also say on this too, some of these are, the details of the numbers maybe are not the best way to look at it right now. It's more of the allocation of these boxes on the space. Because we'll be able to, once we
Sure.
kind of know the idea, we can always dig in and find creative solutions to getting a little bit more. So the big ones for this are where the building's located, maintaining the driveway all the way through, considering closing down 254 and allocating it to parking or additional park space. And those are the main overall gestures, as well as it being a 2-story building with room for addition. Another thing that is common on all these plans for concept 1, 2, and 3, the existing city hall buildings, we plan on maintaining them and using them for our elected officials and constitutional officials. So they will still have function, but will not be used for the dedicated program that we've been talking about with regard to the city staff. I'm
Any
happy.
other questions about concept one before we go to concept two? Let's go through them, and then we may circle back.
That works for me.
Okay.
So moving forward, next page, please. Concept two, many of the same elements are still here. The drive that exists, the current drive-through that exists will remain. It'll be able to connect from First Street all the way through. We're still assuming that you can close down 254. Another thing I might add on this one is these are not wholesale items. If you like something from one concept, we can utilize that in another
Mix and
one.
match.
So, yeah, it's a mix. This is an effort to mix and match to make the best layout. This is also documenting the fact that we're going to have to utilize stormwater retention somewhere on the site. So in this application where you see the SMF and the blue square in the front, that is where a portion of the stormwater will be housed in this layout. Alternatively to that, you can also get stormwater retention underneath parking spaces, and that should be more than enough for this site based off the square footage that we're planning on adding. Parking tends to be more expensive, but you're trying to get a much more dense civic community community campus, and that kind of goes hand in hand with that. Again, we're proposing off of 254 the park and potentially pavilion setting. So you get use from that parking lot both to the west and to the east for the city campus, as well as this connected plaza that makes use of this breezeway that already exists, this arcade that exists between the two city hall buildings, connecting Newberry Road all the way to First Avenue, allowing that to be a event space as well, making use of those mixed concepts that we showed earlier. This is a two-story building with room for expansion. The main public entry is off of First Avenue with a staff entry where the star is located under the covered breezeway.
Can you, my commissioners are better with architecture than I am. Can you tell me what a covered breezeway is? Is that a grander walkway that, we have a structure in between? Describe a covered breezeway in relation.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So actually, we can flip back to it, but some of the examples that are inside of here, that's what we're talking about, where that is what you currently have, an example of a breezeway that's covered, but it's more just for walking use so that you are out of the rain. What we're talking about is something that expands a little bit more so that you can get use of it for more public multimodal functions underneath of it. So you can have booths that are set up, you can have tables, you have a little bit more room than just a designated walk aisle.
So, Amy, can you go back to concept one? So in concept one, the dark square that says covered breezeway, that's sort of just a big pavilion that you would be able to drive under and park and walk under when
Yes.
it's cleared out? Am I not saying that right?
No, I was told the same way. That label's pointing to the rectangle below it.
Okay, so that's just that section there. So a covered breezeway, big wide open path that for people to walk. But in concept one, I still drive under it to get to the multimodal pedestrian corridor.
Yeah.
Can you come up to the mic? We're recording this for folks at home.
So, concept one here, you'll see that that covered breezeway kind of reaches out and across.
Right.
We were kind of trying to figure out how to get the drive-through to work with this kind of setup. And so that gesture kind of introduces the breezeway and sets it up for the next one. You could also think of it, another possibility, as an extension of the building itself, and there's your drive-through. Now for option two, you'll notice the breezeway is a bit wider.
Right.
Thank you. The intent with this, so the breezeway, it kind of, it communicates the entry, right? You see it kind of reaching out to you, you know where you're supposed to walk. With this one being a bit wider, we're thinking having a really wide breezeway in addition to those plaza areas. When you're having craft fairs, farmers markets, you now have a space that doubles
Right.
as covered vendor spaces.
Okay. I
Is that-
think that's, and so the red area underneath the covered breezeway is
I
plaza,
think it was like a
open.
pink plaza, yeah.
It could or could not be paved parking lot space or just grass,
Yeah.
landscaped, grassy areas.
So with concept 2, as opposed to concept 1 and 3, we're looking more at like a horizontal multimodal corridor. 2 is going to be a little different than that, in that the horizontal is more just for vehicles. The vertical is for personnel, for pedestrians. So concept 2 is kind of breaking away from the multimodal and saying, maybe there's a stretch here that's just for cars, maybe there's a stretch here that's just for people, is a way to kind of simplify it a little bit.
And in concept 2, instead of going 2 stories, we're just spreading out more? Is that why we've taken up more of the space?
Actually, in here, it still is 2 stories, but
Okay.
you'd be able to expand it later on to fill an additional space on there. So
Why-
right where that arrow and the star are, that would be the initial 2-story with room to grow, basically.
Okay. Why in concept 2 is the western part of the building so much closer to the road than in concept 1?
The biggest is to make use of that change in the plaza.
Okay.
So concept 1, it doesn't have that vertical element, so you can
Right.
expand horizontally on the site. This one, though, you'd have to make use of that front lawn space over to the west.
Okay. Commissioner Maison?
So is the driveway is gonna be only covered, not the plaza? The plaza, like for pedestrians, is not gonna be covered?
So in this concept, no, the plaza has a portion of it that's covered. The driveway isn't covered at all.
But the breezeway is, how
Breezeway
wide is
is-
that? I mean, I know it could be anything at this point, but what is, in this scale, what is that, 20 feet, 15 feet? I mean, how, for a farmer's market, Mike, you go to these things all the time, how, because I like the idea of having a covered area where people could set up booths, 20 feet wide enough? Is that too wide?
15 to 20 would give
15.
you, let's say, sorry. 15 would give you 5 on each side for a vendor and table, 5-foot walkway in the middle. 20 could give you
10 feet
5,
wide.
5,
Yeah.
10 in the middle.
Okay.
So it all depends on how many people you're planning on having under there.
Okay.
But let's say 15 to 20.
All right. Yeah. And he gave up a fish fry to be here tonight, too. He didn't give a fish fry for anybody. That's the love of this town right here. Okay. All right. Any other questions on concept 2 before were you done with concept 2, or did I interrupt you?
No, I'm done with
Okay.
concept 2, so
All
it's
right.
really based off your questions.
Let's take a look at 3.
All right. Concept 3, the biggest change on this one is it really tries hard to focus and center the building within the centered area on the site. It increases circulation around the building. It moves the drive-through from being located internal to the campus out towards the front. You have potential room for parking and expansion to the west, as well as a new plaza concept where it makes use of this connectivity between State Road 26 and this internal corridor area. The biggest thing I'd say about this is it pushes all the vehicular circulation to the outside of the campus, as opposed to some of the other ones that make use of it flowing through in the interior of the campus. Howard has a few things he will say about that.
Commissioners, Mr. Mayor and all. Howard McLean. I just want to clarify something in general about this multimodal aspect. We need to get emergency vehicles on site. And so you really should consider the practicality of having what you have now is a vehicular route that goes through the building. And it doesn't need to be always used for vehicles. It can be, shut off with cones, bollards, gates, whatever you want to do at different times of the day or week. But it is a good commodity to have, if you want to say it. It's something in your belt. It's belt and suspenders. Just to know that you can get a fire truck right through your site is very nice. And emergency vehicle requires 20 feet wide and about a 15-foot high clearance above. So you could, say in this example of concept 3, the plaza on the, directly off the building, that could actually be covered. If you have a high enough space and the columns are spaced far enough, you can get a vehicle through there if you need to. And it's an important thing to consider. And that's true with all the concepts. And as we know, we have utilities going east-west through the site, and it's impractical to build over. And one thing I want to point out with this is that I showed the drive-through going on the north side of the site. Now, what that does is it keeps the vehicular traffic out from day-to-day operations. You can keep that when you expand the building, but just be aware that that drive-through will always have to end up in a parking lot to get out of the site. And so when you do a second addition, that addition would happen over the parking lot. And that's just one thing I wanted to point out. You could leave it as little as a 20-foot wide drive if you wanted to, but you would still need a route to get out. But you have a good location now for that drive-through window right now. It may need to be renovated, upgraded, and what Barnett mentioned earlier about drive-through windows is something to consider as security. Many banks don't have the direct interface of there's a person behind the glass because someone pulls up with a gun and suddenly you're threatened. If it's a remote site where it's only a video screen, it's not as personal, but it's a lot safer. So, two sides of the coin. A couple of things to think about. But
I want to clarify, all three of the concepts that you've brought forth address the ability for emergency service vehicles to access it. Is there one of these that you think is safer?
no, they could all be done.
They're all three
I'm just
contain
stressing
that.
the importance of what you've got now
Right.
is
And
it's good to have.
I really do. I like the road down the middle. Whether how we do that with the multimodal, or I think it's better where you have a clear pedestrian places to walk, but it's also a vehicle can get through there.
Mhm.
You know, 'cause we don't have a lot of pedestrians walking through there, you know, between 9 to 5. We're thinking about the festivals and the growth and trying to encourage downtown activities and those kinds of things. Okay. And can you speak to the kitchen and restroom addition here?
Sure. We're just taking a look at, let's use the, that southeast portion of the project site. On this concept, if you look closely around the perimeter, you'll see some little L shapes at the corners or some little beige colored squares along there. And that is something I'm thinking we could use to propose the limits of the city hall concept. It would help define the boundaries. If you got an open field, it's just an open field. You put a couple big brick columns in the corners and fence between.
I got you.
Suddenly,
Right.
you have an estate.
Right.
You've defined your land. And so that's something you can do along the perimeter. It's not expensive, but it buys you that property and it increases the appearance of your site. So getting to where the kitchen and restrooms are shown there, I see that as a completely independent building, could be done at any time. But right now, with the community building, they need restrooms, they need a better kitchen. If anything, a catering kitchen is what I'm proposing in this. And so it would serve the community building, it could serve that park or pavilion immediately to the north, and of course the farmer's market as well. So that's really like a community structure almost, or an addition to your community building. But it would help to keep that area active.
And let's say, because I'm like, this concept 3 has a simplicity and a straightforwardness that I'm appreciating. I'm not sure about the park, pavilion, kitchen, restrooms. If we wanted to utilize concept 2 and just keep that parking, we can still create it where it's not a cut through, straight through. It's just increased parking there, and then obviously you can always tear up a parking lot and come back and put something like that in later.
Or when you move the park pavilion kitchen over to that dead space where we have the,
Or flip them.
flip that over to the right and put it on the perimeter of that open market, farmer's
Oh, put it where the
market.
farmer's market is?
which would be
So
sort
then
of
we keep
concept
our
one.
parking in the downtown, we flip that to the edge.
There
Yeah.
you go.
You know, in most of the festivals we put on, there's people who want grassy areas, and then there's food trucks and things like that that actually would prefer to be on asphalt.
Asphalt.
You know, so if we flip it, then it, you know, you can still expand the park a little bit, and then if there's a festival, we just close off part of the parking lot for the festival aspect. And maybe we can build the parking lot in a predetermined way that makes that an easy thing to do, some sort of structure in the medium, you know, that,
Yeah.
you know, you have to, because I hate it when they do ribbon rope off and it looks ugly, but if there was a nice, you know, brick wall or something that separated one side of the parking lot from the other. But the only thing in concept 3 that I'm not quite feeling is putting the park and the kitchen, whether we ever do this kitchen, right up against the municipal building. Especially because I think a lot of people that use the municipal building, they're pulling in a whole bunch of stuff. So they want to park pretty close. If it's weddings and things like that, you got people dressed up. I wouldn't want them to have to park and then walk across. It's not that far of a walk, though, actually, when I'm thinking about it. But you got your mic on, Mark?
I'm just saying that, just for the simplicity of it, and to keep the parking lot that we so need downtown, across from our restaurants and all that we got going on there. I mean, the parking pavilion, and you could just, like I said, just flip it to that empty lot and scale it.
Yeah.
And then we still got all of our stuff we need.
But I like the parking expansion on the west side. I think that's a nice touch. I
That's
like
nice.
the open plaza space. I think that's very flexible for usage. And I really like these idea of some sort of monuments on boundary corners, letting you know this is our campus. I think it would be better to flip the park over here, because that that corner is the only, since it's kind of halfway in the middle of that park, that would look a little odd, I think. But the rest of them, I think, would give a nice finished.
I agree,
touch.
Mr. Mayor. Getting the kitchen and restrooms out there to the very southeast corner, it makes a stronger impact that this
Right.
is the corner of Civic
Right.
Campus. And so it doesn't have to look like a restroom, obviously, but
Right.
It could be done in the same style as everything else, and it just helped define that corner. One thing that you should also all look at for all three concepts is access to the site. If you're westbound, what are you going to see first? Are you going to see City Hall first, or are you going to come across the parking first? If it's your first time, you want to see the building, ideally, then the parking, or the building in the background of the parking. And we can do it on this one. It works fine. They all have the parking that is really currently at the location of that drive. And, you know, that is important. If you're eastbound, it would be just like it is now. And so you see the building, and then you see the parking lot.
In this concept, because I'm counting the first parking as the one furthest east, but I think right now there's trees, there's lean-to structures on the cold storage building.
Right.
In my mind, once you clear the Berry house, when all those are cleaned up and gone, through the parking lot, you would see into the plaza area here. That would be my line of sight.
Mhm.
Is that the parking you're talking about, not trying to
Yes,
see
sir.
first?
Yes, sir. I think the parking lot to the far east, you'll have driven past it
Right.
by the time
By the time you
City
see
Hall.
the building.
Right, with the cold storage building there, it's kind of blocking your view.
Right.
So, I'm just pointing out that parking space in the middle of the site now is important. And I know, say on this concept 3, you could, well, if you missed it, you could go around to the side and go to that parking lot on the west. Or if you missed that one too, you could always head east on State Road 26 and then get to the other parking lot. But
And I also want to be conscious, because it seems like in concept 3, all of that linear parking really encourages a cut through instead of to use it as a parking lot. So now I think we can mitigate that with the way that you orient parking spaces and force people to kind of weave their way around.
right.
But I don't see a whole lot of value in shutting down a road to increase parking if we create it in such a way that it's a speed through for folks to go through.
So would that go through, or would it be cut off from First Ave? Since we're shutting down 254th.
I mean, I'd want a way to get through, so well, no matter which way I come in, I can get out the other side. I just think you'd have to, you see, I think it's kind of hard to see in the dark, shaded areas, but I think the entrance and exits are a little off kilter on both sides. It's easier to see on that TV screen back there, actually.
Little bit.
That one looks fairly straight. But if you move the park pavilion, you know, over here on your first concept design, I thought you had it, you addressed that one perfectly, right? Because you got to come in, you got to make a turn, you got to come back up. I think that slows folks down enough that it's not a quick cut through.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple of observations to that point is you kind of want to look at the total number of connections on the northern road there. In concept 3, they had 2 connections associated with City Hall, in which case it might not be a bad idea to eliminate the connection there at 254th. You know, because 3 connections in that short of a distance is about all you can handle without becoming a traffic problem. But even if we have the connection at 254th, you know, I consider this kind of a bubble diagram. It won't look exactly like that. There's plenty of opportunity for in the parking lot, as you get halfway through the parking lot, there to be kind of a great big divider that you got to work your way around to come back out. Something that the average commuter in Newberry that's familiar would say, well, that's way more trouble than going up one more block, taking a left, and then I can cut through on a regular city street. So I think that when we get into, right now we're looking at big squares and rectangles. When we get into detailed design, those are very important features to include. You know, shown very linearly, I get where the mayor's coming from. I actually swelling with pride that I know DOT and some of the other groups have been in here presenting these concepts, and he's picked up on cut-throughs can be problematic for us.
If I can say too, looking at concept 1, really if you pull a diagonal line between First Avenue all the way through, this portion of this can be flipped over pretty easily with option number 3 for the park pavilion and parking connection. So it addresses some of the concerns you've been bringing up where you prefer the pavilion to possibly be over in this bottom southeast corner of the building, to have a jog inside the parking so that you don't have a cut through. But since you also brought up the fact that you like concept 3, the actual campus portion of it can be imposed over here. So it kind of has 2 different elements to it that you can switch out.
That's a house that's right there. Now, where is their driveway? Because
It's going to be on the
Railroad
east
Avenue.
north side.
you Seaboard here.
Everybody has a great
Seaboard.
memory.
So there's a
We
dirt.
just give them that.
Right. Well, it's not there yet. We just gave them the easement
I know,
so
why-
that they can do it. Yeah.
Because I was looking at where we, talk about cutting off that parking lot. Then I'm like, okay, how would that resident get out of there?
And the reason we gave them to that easement is because of this conversation right here. And actually, the only legal way for them to get in their house right now is really tough to make that turn because it's 5 or 10 feet away from on the west side of their house. But they're reorienting all of their additions to the house to be eastern facing so that they'll come in this way. So they've been paying really close attention to this and have been on top of it for a while now. So
I noticed that in concept 1 and 2, there's no restrooms shown, and in concept 3 there is. Is it because the restrooms are in the plaza?
Excuse me. That's just to show the variety between the different plans. Just to act as a conversation piece, right?
that's the
We can very
first time we've
easily-
ever had that part of the
Okay.
We
conversation.
can very easily put a restroom in concept 1, 2, and 3, or kitchen, or we can not have one at all. So we're trying to just mix and match the pieces.
So are there going to be restrooms in the plaza as well, or no? These are public restrooms that I'm seeing in concept 2?
It's the commission's choice.
Right. This is a late. They may have been thinking about it for a while. It's the first time we've kind of considered it. What we have given them is we want to think about a holistic campus that is very, very attractive for farmers markets, festivals, those kinds of things. And I kind of surprising that we haven't thought about public bathrooms yet.
So with that being said, so like right where you have the little corners where you would kind of like put the bricks. So, you know, how cool would it be to have like an electronic billboard for the city hall, like a notice for our constituents,
Yeah.
for our citizens, to let them know what's going on.
Yeah. That is the problem. He's not even joking. It's against our time orders.
So when the fireworks and the fish fries are happening, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I think this is not the topic for conversation tonight, but I think it would be in our best interest, given, to see if we can acquire this 20-foot sliver of ground here, because it's kind of, it's just an odd piece, you know? Okay, yeah, if I'm on a different one. Can you go to concept 3?
See that little road right there?
If you go to concept 3, you'll see that southeastern L, backward L.
See it?
And then there's a little sliver of Berry Park that we don't own.
This sliver right here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so far, the owner, that little sliver goes with the building. And he's been very, pharmacy. He's been very, cooperative about letting the farmers market set up there and those kind of things. But every event you have to secure approval. You have to have insurance to cover all those kinds of things. And it would be odd to me to have a barrier or a sign halfway through the park and then have 20 feet. If, you know, and he may not be willing to sell it. It may not be.
We have ways.
I don't know the name of the gentleman off the top of my head. It's not, anyway, we'll find out who it is, but.
We don't own the whole green space. We own 3/4 of the green space.
Right.
The other parts where the metal fences in front of it, where
Yeah.
the whole, there was a park there.
There used to be,
Little sitting
yeah,
areas.
there used to be the Kincaid building, and the city owned half of Berry Park, and that guy owned half of Berry Park, and we landscaped and put the table there, and we paid for all of it. But I think especially when we're embarking on a multi-million-dollar project like this, it'd be nice to go ahead and not have to just leave this empty strip.
Money can pay for that 20 feet.
Yep. Yep. They needed to go up to the second story.
Can I add something as well?
Yeah.
While we're talking through this, because I think it will be a very easy decision on point that we can make. The the eastern portion where this is the park pavilion and the parking, that was put together in this proposal because we were asked to look and explore that avenue, but it's not an assumed avenue that we have, right? So you can probably cut off that portion, the parking and the park pavilion conversation over there, and have that as an independent choice.
Sure.
All 3 of the other concepts still work regardless of it. Now, the parking may get a little bit tighter, clearly, because we're losing that from that parking pavilion portion. That's not good. But they will still stand alone. So it'll be more of a choice of, do we want that or do we not want to pursue that avenue?
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Okay, on concept 3, there's a white line around the ice plant or cold storage. So what is that indicative of?
Is that property line?
That's the property line.
So we're going to have a road going over their property?
So most likely on that one, it would need to be lined up south of that property line. We would assume that for right now.
And I invited the folks who have that building under contract. They couldn't come here tonight because I really would like their input on those types of questions, Commissioner Farnsworth, because I think we have the opportunity to make this so it works for that business, increased parking, ability to drive through. So hopefully they can get here before we get too further in this project.
So the state's not going to buy that piece of property?
No, but the state is willing to work with us to save the building. So they only need, Mike can speak more, they only need a certain number of feet, and it's that back lean-to section that was added on, so that part's got to go, but the original structure can stay.
And that's being sold?
Yep, and it'll be renovated, and I'll send you a couple of renderings and pictures of what it'll look like. It's exciting.
Our understanding is it's under contract and likely to close in the next 2 weeks.
Too bad we didn't pick that one up.
We need another antique building
Yeah.
to renovate.
If you look at concept one, you'll see that same roadway gesture fitting underneath the dash property line. So regardless of what happens in those conversations, this still
Still a good question.
works.
And you still have other questions, Commissioner Parker?
Yes. I would like, I like concept 3, with this couple exceptions. I don't think the parking should be there. I think we should go ahead and use that for an expansion. And I think, instead of a 1-story building, we should make it a 2-story building. And this here.
It is,
Concept
No.
one.
So first,
Concept two.
I think he's on concept 3 though.
concept-
I think he's talking about things he likes.
All the other two
back
are
and forth.
2-story.
Yeah.
But I do like the drive-through on the outside there. It would make it real easy for somebody to just pull through there and make a payment, and they can either head north or they can head south from there.
Chain it off.
I do like that. And is there any chance of anybody buying that piece of property? No, next door here where they have the farmer's market. Has
The
been
Berry
any-
Park.
Any kind of interest or anything in anybody purchasing that?
Yes, there's interest. There's interest right now from a developer that proposes to move the old home from the church property to there and renovate it into something commercial. However, their intent was to acquire that building and do both at the same time, and they didn't acquire that building. They don't have the contract for the building. When I asked him, would he do either as a standalone, and he didn't outright say no. He just suggested that they felt like that the best business opportunity meant they would have to do both at one time. So we occasionally get some interest, and I think, a couple, if you'll remember, maybe 2 years ago, the commission had asked us to prepare that for sale, and so we got an RFP together to push it out, and then the commission asked us not to and said they wanted to keep it as a park. But there's some opportunity there. If it doesn't work out that the commission wants to make it part of an overall master plan like this, I'm certain that there'll be some commercial interest in it at some point.
I was just kind of interested. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of businesses downtown as it is, and I was just wondering if we should take that spot away from a potential business being downtown. I mean, either way, it ain't gonna hurt my feelings.
Understood.
But
Well, and part of the reason we paused that RFP was because we also knew this conversation was coming. We needed space for a potential police department. We needed, we just didn't want to move forward before we made sure we didn't need that space. And we were kind of all over the place in terms of what we wanted there, whether it was just increased parking, and then the farmers market festivals took off, and everybody said, well, let's just wait and see what happens with this conversation.
okay, and the plaza area. Now that's not covered. It's not a covered plaza.
In concept 3, the thought was what Eric was showing earlier with the open air plazas or the indoor-outdoor space. With this plan, the idea was that if you had a commission meeting and needed overflow space, it'd be nice to have the plaza that's directly adjacent to the building at least have some roof coverage, at least a front porch at a minimum. Maybe deeper if you wanted to make a larger space so they could actually seat, a good number of people out when you have a big meeting or some other event that is overflow. So if you can do those types of spaces adjacent to the building, it's cheap square footage. And, I think everybody in Florida likes a covered porch. And you get a breeze, you're in the shade, and maybe you don't want to go inside the building. Maybe you just want to watch it on a big screen TV on the outside like a sports bar,
I mean,
And this is high entertainment here, folks.
It
One-
can be.
One of the problems with any type of venue in Florida is rain.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if that were covered, it would give, the ability to somebody having an actual event instead of having to cancel it at the last minute because of the rain. Because, I mean, you don't know whether it's gonna rain or not. And what else I want to ask?
While you're thinking about that, Monty, can you speak to what is the thinking behind not in concept 3, not pushing the building west instead of having that parking expansion area, push the building itself and bring all the parking into the middle? And I'm kind of
You
thinking,
could certainly do that.
is
you
there
could do that.
is there a reason?
Yeah, the reason is, in this the basic concept is you have the two plazas stacked on top of each other. And then the idea is that square of the city hall would actually be probably the tallest portion of the building. It might be 2.5 stories just in height. The idea being that when you're traveling westbound on First Avenue, you'd see this, iconic building form. And so it addresses westbound traffic, it addresses the north facade, and also when you're on State Road 26 and you look down between those two plazas, you see this, building in the background.
Aesthetically, I think what we have the opportunity to do here, and one of the reasons why I really appreciate the commission that voted to spend the extra money to create the walkway between City Hall and the municipal building, is it makes it look like it's a contiguous campus. It's supposed to be
Right.
there. And I think ultimately, from my perspective, at the end of this process, I'd like to have the same effect. Whatever is there, it looks like it was meant to be there from the beginning, and it flows. So are we trying to align the buildings by having them that way? If pushing the new facility westward, would that create a disruptive
I think
aesthetic
concept,
feel?
no, not necessarily. Concept 1 shows that to the west,
Right.
and concept 2 does too, right?
Yeah. So part of this was exploring an alternate
Yeah.
with the building purposely centered in the space and how we would make use of that. If you want to look at what you're talking about, consider concept 1, but with that building pushed a little bit farther to the western property line, and that would be appropriate. I don't think
Okay.
there's any aesthetic that will really.
Except for the fact that you would look through the parking lot to see the building instead of seeing the building being the more dominant feature first and parking behind.
Right. The thought I had on concept 3 was you would always, if you're traveling west, you would always see the front of the building, whether phase 1 is the only phase that's built for the next 50 years, or phase 2 happens down the road.
Okay.
But, so with concept 1 and 2, you have the north and the west elevations facing the street. Those would really be your permanent front elevations, because eventually you'd build an addition on the east side. And then if you're traveling west, that would become the new elevation, which is not a bad thing.
Okay.
It's a different approach to it. But I do like the idea of consolidating the parking in one spot, because you do need to get handicap parking, you've got to get delivery access, you need to have dumpster access. There's a lot of things that we need to get to the building that typically come in vehicles and need parking.
Okay. Commissioner Coleman, you got any?
Okay.
Commissioner Farnsworth, you remember that question?
I do. Mike, does the state of Florida, when they do the two-way pairs, are they gonna have parking on the street, so that?
Less.
Mr. Mayor, the number of overall parking spaces after the twin pairs is done would be less, which is one of the reasons FDOT is planning to make some parking improvements. They'd planned to put a parking lot where cold storage is. They've agreed that if we are going to preserve cold storage, they would forego that parking. My intent is to say, hey, if you were going to put parking at cold storage, would you put it just immediately south of cold storage, where we're talking about right now? Seems to me the same money. So if we can make all those stars align, I plan to ask them. There are also, if you'll remember, there are 13 ladder streets in between the twin pairs as you roll through town, and they are planning to redo 6 of them and put parking along those 6.
Is this one of them over here?
255th is one of them. So their goal was to get to net zero. They're going to leave the city with as many parking spaces as they found it, and they won't have parking on both sides of either street. They're going to have parking on one side where they can get it on both directions.
I kind of like the, yes, I kind of like the parking, the different options of parking. Because, City Hall will be open, and you may have a pavilion, and then you have a plaza. So, I mean, it gives, a variety of ways to get around. Handicap.
And I think it's important to remember that I may need parking in the municipal building. I may need parking because I'm going to a meeting at City Hall.
Yeah.
I may need parking because I want to go to, hopefully, a tap house
Yeah.
and the cold storage.
Absolutely.
So it may be different crowds and are trying to get to slightly different areas inside this. So I got my fingers crossed. Yeah. Commissioner Clark?
So, if this ain't the right time, just say, I know we're looking at the top-down view,
Okay.
but for square footage is looking at these blocks as you have them. I know they're not probably to scale, but concept 3, I'm looking at 15,000 square foot on a single floor. 1 and 2, I got almost 20,000 on 2 levels, but there really ain't that much difference to me in the building besides pushing the parking or the expansion level. What about if we even take, if we like concept 3, why can't we make this one 2 floors and even shrink it down so we can get more parking, and we still got 15,000 square feet?
You would. It's drawn bigger than you need. You don't need 15,000 square feet. You talked about 12,000.
Yeah, I'm just
For a
saying though, if we
two-story
go up,
building, that's a 6,000.
we can definitely go up and save us some room
The
and
parking,
get us some parking.
to give you an idea of scale, the parking expansion, I believe that's 6,000 square feet. In that little dotted line.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that could be your building footprint if you want to do a 12,000 square foot, 2-story building. So you can see you're going to have more site available. You
Yeah,
have plenty
I'm-
of site.
By
So
1
we
and
would-
2 concept, the buildings are quite large for the square footage compared to,
They are. They're bigger than
Okay, okay.
they need to be.
so I'm definitely into the 2 level. Not sure what the square footage we're needing, but I think that'd give us a whole lot more room to do other stuff.
Sure. It's our understanding that phase 1 be a 2-story building, 12,000 square feet, and we should really show a dashed line for 8,000 additional square feet for a future addition. And so we can, when we do get to
Yes, sir.
scale,
Yes, sir.
we can start looking at that, so you see an accurate footprint, and we see exactly how many parking spaces we could fit in there, landscaping strips and sidewalks and all that.
How many parking spaces do we anticipate needing?
We're growing 10% a year.
So how many parking spaces, we have, what, 5 back here now? How many
Miss-
are there?
Mr. Mayor, our LDRs identify how many parking spaces are required. It's based upon the amount of office space that you have. There's a formula. Our zoning is central business district, so we have room for variances for that. But generally, you'd need, 1 for all planned employees, probably
I
one fleet
misunderstood the
vehicle.
question. Are you talking about how many does City Hall actually need for our employees? Or are you talking about how many do we need for
In general.
a
In
festival downtown, 1906, all that kind of stuff?
And I interpreted it to be staff and visitors on any given 8 to 5 day. That's probably the max in terms of daily operations. Now, if we have a festival, then you guys know the drill. It's park anywhere you can park.
Well, I was at 1906, what's today, Tuesday? Was last, maybe, something like that. Every evening I've gone by, this parking lot over here has been full, and people are spilling out. They're
Well, I
parking
think
up
we'll
and
get
down.
some when we sit down and draw this thing to
Right.
scale.
So when I think
We'll get some,
we'll get, and I
some
agree, I think
additional parking.
we can always work on tweaking it to get a little bit more, but if you have a tap house that's bringing in, I'm just gonna keep saying it until it's real, right? That's bringing in 20 or 30 cars, you got 1906, you got other businesses hopefully that bring in more retail, you know, I can see there being a need downtown for quite a bit more parking than what we currently offer in that little parking lot by the municipal building on a Thursday night, you know. So that's why I like the conversation of how can we squeeze, get a little bit more here or there, how can we get a little bit in different areas. Any other thoughts from the commission? I'm gonna ask Jamie to come up. You got questions, Ricky?
I was wondering where Monty's Splash Park's going on.
It's going on the roof of the tap
It's
house.
going out by Coleman's property,
He's in a
there's water out there already.
Jamie, would you mind coming up? I just want to get, I want to get your perspective on 1, 2, and 3 of the conversation we've had. What question have we missed, not asked?
I think you've covered the majority of it. You've got potential traffic circulation on all 3 options. You've not built anything on any utilities that you need to maintain. You've got pedestrian flow, and you've got options for things outside of just the municipal day-to-day activities. I'm not 100% sure on concept 3 that you will be able to get the 3rd entrance out on the 1st that close to 255th. That's a conversation to have with DOT.
I kind of like the idea on concept 3 of shutting down the eastern, giving that as more parking, and just having those 2, and then the one on the south. You had two on the north and 1 on the south, shutting down that one at the top. Do you think that would?
I don't see an issue with that whatsoever. I think they would approve 2 in that block easier than 3, and a lot of it depends on the spacing. And to Commissioner Clark's point and Howard's, you know, you're just looking at blocks and squares right now. It's hard to be spatial. You know, it's not to represent it in a PowerPoint. You're not perfect, but if you give them an idea of where to start as they start tuning that design down, and everything's not square 90-degree angles, and they put some flow to it, it'll make a lot more sense as they move into a more final design. You know, that block that we're showing close to 255th may be cheated back a little bit. Your buildings may be shifted a little west, east, whatnot, and that'll bear out where you'll get all that parking and how much you'll need from the LDRs.
You probably spent more time in more different city halls than any of us. In your experience, any of these 3 concepts, better, worse, you find yourself gravitating towards?
Well, while Monty's Commissioner Farnsworth's point is well taken about the easy in and out, personally, and it's just a personal concept, I'm not sure that the drive-through right there on that facade is the best place. And we kind of talked through it 2 or 3 different ways, and I thought that if there was a way to orient it more to the center, to your multimodal, you know, you could have covered over your drive space, it could serve another function, you know, during festivals and whatnot. I was just worried about the drive-through being what you looked like your front door as you went westbound on a state road.
I hadn't thought about the aesthetics of the drive, and I really do. I like the look of that multimodal. When we were looking at the South St. Augustine, I don't know that we would do it in the bricks, you know, because I'm sure that's a whole lot more expensive. But that kind of multi-level look aesthetically, I kind of like. But I think the point of if what you see as you drive by is the drive-through, it's kind of hard to hide that.
Exactly, and the devil's in the details with the whole thing. Once you get past the aesthetics of the building, you know, a couple other things that's got to be considered is the stormwater. Or you don't have open air storm, or we don't be able to convince DOT to accept some of that stormwater off-site, or you don't try to have an infiltration basin type system where you pipe it underneath a parking lot. I've been involved with those. If designed correctly, they work. If not, they don't, and they become a maintenance issue. All depends on the details of that. You have a lot of other things that you got to hide as part of this: air conditioners, generators, you know, dumpsters, dumpster pads. You know, you want it to be your showplace and aesthetically look good from both sides, because you don't have people on both sides, but you also have a lot of things that you need to make the campus function that you want to be out of sight that isn't the first thing somebody sees.
Right. Commissioner Farnsworth, you got a question for?
Yeah, one thing that concerns me is that we can't run water to the fountain out here, so how are we gonna get water to, this new building?
I can run water to the fountain out here when we start this Twin Pairs and we rip up the state road. I'll have the fountain where it'll bubble all day long.
All right, 'cause I'm sure Mike told me we couldn't run water.
Oh, it's not that we couldn't. It's
Oh.
couldn't.
Okay.
It's I couldn't without tearing up a state highway, and
Well,
they kind
that-
of frown on
That
that.
ain't no problem.
The Lions Club, fountain is down again? I
Sir,
thought we got water to the,
we
yeah,
did.
it's
We
there.
didn't. We didn't have a proper drain. We had to build a French drain because there was not a sanitary
I
sewer
had a
connection.
sip out of it one day. It's been a while now. I can remember that day.
Why didn't you bring this up last night? About Mike's water problem stuff?
You know, it's just,
Well,
It popped in my head.
you know, all jokes
Anyway.
aside with that, our sewer happens to be in the back, and that's part of the reason we're considering this design. And to properly do that, we would need to get that sewer connection around the municipal building to facilitate it being there long term.
now the air conditioner, that can be actually put on top of the building, couldn't it?
You know, and that goes to your look and your facade.
Right.
You know, do you want a flat roof? And, you know, that's one concept and one design and one construction price and one maintenance concern, or do you want something else, a standing seam roof, something with pitch? You know, and it all depends on aesthetically what you want.
Do we want another clock that doesn't work? Are you good with one clock that doesn't work?
How about that
We
one?
went, as a staff, Mayor, we went to.
Is it working now? The water fountain's down, the clock's on.
My understanding, the
keep up
clock,
with
the clock functions. But we did go to the city of Alachua. We did go to the city of Williston as staff and with representatives from the firm, and we got an idea of things that worked well and things that might not have worked quite as well. Things that, at Williston that they thought were a good concept and design, when they actually put them in practice, they may not have functioned quite like they intended. And it's just like building a house yourself. You know, you can build 10 of them. And every time you finish one, well, I should have done that, and I should have done that. And I wish this was bigger, or that was there, or this was here.
Anybody else have any questions for Jamie? Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. I do have one question for Travis, since he's our resident, Travis, you've got the most experience when it comes to festivals and helping with flow and those kind of, and I know that that's probably these guys are sitting there wondering, why are these guys thinking about City Hall and they keep talking about festivals? But yeah, I think what we're trying to do is create a vibrant downtown that benefits our tap house and our restaurants and all of those folks. So is there something here that we have towards that venue, towards that vein of thought? Is there something here we haven't thought of? You have a preference, or?
I think that the way the plazas are set up on here, I think they work well for some of, say, our events. Example would be tree lighting, those kind of things. So concept 3, specifically speaking where the kitchen, restrooms, park pavilion, I believe that if we can utilize the space where the Berry Park is, I think that would be better for that. And have parking closer to the municipal building, which would allow, like, in my opinion, that parking can be used more for City Hall and for that park pavilion area, as opposed to, like right now, you'd have to park over there, walk through the park pavilion to get to the plaza, all of that. That would be my thoughts on that specifically. As far as the plaza, I think that it's a great concept. We haven't gotten to the next slide where you can actually see it, like as a concept,
Right.
but I think it looks really good, and I think it allows the space that we would need.
So, and do you have any thoughts about the multimodal driveway center place in terms of not just as a citizen of Newberry ability to get through, but also in terms of downtown festival activity type?
I think
traffic?
if the space is wide enough, I think that it would be really nice. I think that on the concept where the drive-through is where it currently is, I believe there's some advantages to that. I also liked where the drive-through is on the outside of the building. The only thing with the drive-through on the outside of the building is if you're coming down First Avenue, if you're going to use that as, you want to see City Hall, you're going to see a drive-through which kind of looks like maybe the side or the back of a building to me. My thoughts are seeing a City Hall drive-through, if you're on First, and that's the first thing you see. I mean, it doesn't give you that visual effect of, look, here's our vibrant City Hall. There's our drive-through. I think the multimodal thing is nice. I was talking to Dallas back there. When we're planning it, we're talking about blocking it off. They have these recessed things that that you could put in temporary bollards. That you can already have it in the asphalt. And when we need it, we could place it. When we don't, we could take it out. Those kind of things.
Okay. All right. Any questions for?
They got hydraulic ones for.
Right.
Anybody else
We
have
can
any
stop
questions
them
for
from
Travis?
coming in and just.
Yeah. Okay, Jamie, I think you think of something else you meant to say.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at the kitchen restroom again and where it's located in Concept 3 and Commissioner Clark's suggestion to shift it. The only thing I would say, and it's not that it can't be overcome regardless of where you put it, sewer right now accesses north and south down the center of 254th. Sewer also accesses east and west behind this building and up the alley between the Tates and Berry Park. So just for ease of construction and cost, exactly, it will get you closer to the gravity sewer if you're closer to 254th or if you're closer to the alley to the north.
We just flip
Right.
the kitchen into the bathroom.
Okay. Mr. Manager, how's the conversation progressed here from your point of view? Are we missing a question, a consideration?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that it's more comprehensive than I anticipated, and I think that really helps. I think Jamie made a great point that we're dealing with squares and rectangles today, and then we'll get into design and things. Everything will take some adjusting. So as long as everybody is patient with, we get into design and we come back and say, hey, we tried every way we could to make one of these things work out, and there's just no way to do it. So we propose to tweak it this way. If there's some tolerance for that, I think we're going to end up with a city hall that everybody in this room is immensely proud of, and realizing that the whole way through we'll never get that perfect, every 100% consensus. So get all the good we can out of it, and call it a day and send an architect out to design a building so we can move forward, take that next step.
Okay, so on that vein, my question is to you guys: what do you think you've heard a bulk of the conversation enough to begin to finalize? Or are we too all over the place? We've spent a lot of time talking about Concept 3.
Yeah.
You've heard that we like the multimodal. Do you need some specific head nods on questions about drive-through on the north side, drive-through in the middle? I mean, that if I was in your place, that'd be kind of where I'd be wanting to head at this point. Tell us what specific things we want. Commissioner Farnsworth?
I was wondering if there's any way to put the drive-through on the west side of the building, and we have a drive-through that goes through the middle of the property side of that. The concern is you're combining flowing traffic with pedestrians, and I don't think that will end up in a good situation.
A couple of thoughts about that. Just that I can't imagine us having a city hall without a drive-through, because people like to use the drive-through. But there's never, and our population will increase, but the ways that people pay also gets more and more diverse. I don't think, I can't imagine, I spent a few days around Alachua City Hall. They're about 12,000 in population. They have a drive-through. There's never a volume enough of pedestrian traffic and and vehicular traffic at any one time that I get concerned at all. I think that his illustration of St. George Street is the best example I can think of where you start to worry about it. If you've been on St. George Street, it is wall-to-wall people, and every now and then somebody comes through in a car and we all manage to just kind of ease over to the sidewalk and let it on by. That would never happen in a 35, 40-year life of this facility. The only time I think we'd have that type of pedestrian traffic would be those after-hour market things where we're not having any drive-through traffic. Then we've got the plaza cordoned off where we're not getting vehicles through there. But during a regular business day, it's 2 or 3 cars every 15 minutes and 2 or 3 staff members walking across trying to get through, or somebody coming in saying, hey, I've got a meeting with the city clerk. Can you point me in the right direction?
I mean, I tend to agree with those, but the other question I had, let's say we could get it on the west side. Is there enough room there that you could, if you're headed eastbound and you turn north, that you could turn into the west side and then still make a U so that you can either come back out and continue heading east, or would you have to then head west and go back a block or two and then turn back around?
We could look at that.
Okay.
We could look
I know
at that.
it's kind of a hard question to spatially answer that right now. That would be my concern, that we create a situation where
You can't make
in
a
order to
U-turn.
get there, the only way I have to get shoved back out the opposite way. And the whole point of a drive-through is that I can drive through and keep going the way that I'm going.
The straighter you can go in and out, the better.
Yeah.
Where we show that parking on the west side of the building, it can outlet to 255th there, kind of mid-block, but it can't outlet to First or to 255th in the upper corner. It's too close to the intersection. DOT wouldn't permit it. So, you know, even though we can draw it in there all day long, DOT won't permit it. So if we get cars up in there, we got to pull them back to the east to get them back out on to First, if that's what we're trying to do. I would say that if we can get them into that area, we're going to dump them on 255th mid-block where the sewer system comes out and where the existing drive-through comes out. And if we keep the existing drive-through on the south side of the new building or between the buildings, I propose that we probably move it to the new building. Pull down the canopy, it's an aluminum canopy, and we actually put the drive-through where it's where it's accessing the new building rather than trying to dip into this existing building. I think that the final design will merit whether that's a good idea or not, but I think that's an option for us, especially if we use a carrier to send it across so that people don't have to try to access the drive-through, the teller straight out of their driver's side window.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, I think Commissioner Farnsworth is talking about putting it up in here.
That's what I thought.
That's right.
Yeah.
And my concern there is just where do you
Is that
dump
what you're
people
talking
out?
about, Commissioner Farnsworth?
Yeah,
I
that's
think
what
there's
was
merit
talking
to that.
If, is he saying if you could come in and do a circle around, you could go back out here, go either way?
That was my question.
Yeah.
If that's possible, then I think it's something we
Then
should
it
consider.
would be, yeah.
If it's only going to dump you out the
If
wrong
you're only
way,
one way, then it ain't worth.
yeah. Okay, so how can we help? Hang on one second. Let's let Jamie come right back and give us his thought here.
I definitely think that that's possible. That's one of the concepts I had originally. And just as a point of reference for the commission's edification, when we went to Williston, they designed their new city hall and they built it without a drive-through. Now they're trying to figure out if they can go back and put one on it. And their design doesn't lend itself well to that, so they haven't figured out how to solve that.
Okay.
We'll have one.
Yeah, we'll have one. I mean, I truly don't believe, especially with a multimodal way to get through that slows you down. I mean, it's the same argument we've made for all of the FDOT. If there's a little bit of a bend, there's curbs, there's bulbs, and I see those obstructions, I slow down. If it's right now a straight shot,
Racetrack.
then I tear through at 30 miles an hour, you know. Okay, so we've gone as in-depth with this conversation, I think, as we can go. The question again for me is now, what do you need to begin to consolidate these ideas and come back with, this is our best shot at what we heard from the bulk?
So for me personally, one of the biggest ones that we need more resolution on is, you've heard kind of the case studies of, with it being multimodal, where really that drive-through can come in, because you either have an we have two opportunities here. One is we keep it as far away from that multimodal plaza as possible, or we keep it where it is currently located, and all three of these options kind of make use of that space. So kind of a decision in one of those two directions would help significantly. The other decision would be for the potential exploring the use of the park and pavilion space, whether we like 1, 2, or 3 concepts better, and if that is still an avenue we want to move forward to. So that's kind of a yes or no. We want to move forward with that one, and then potentially one of the 3 concepts stands out more to others. Those are the 2 biggest things right now. The concept 3, I think we've heard enough that we can continue in that direction with some of the modifications. Another thing I would like to point out before we do talk about the drive-through, concept 3 that I heard a lot of people respond well to. If the drive-through option with it being downside to the curb appeal is an issue, just note that you can still get option 3, and that drive-through kind of comes either to the west or into the multimodal plaza area. So that is a possibility as well, pushing the building forward, expanding that middle core plaza area, that distance.
Okay, so let's do those in reverse order, and let's see if we can do 1, 2, or 3 broad strokes is what we're leaning towards, and then we'll narrow down some of those more specific questions. That makes sense? Anybody want to reach for the mic and go first, or is that a bad way to do this? I mean, I'm open to suggestions.
No.
We've got lots of various concepts here to
I like, okay, just
throw it out there.
I'll throw it out there.
Yeah.
I like concept 2 as far as parking and the pavilion is concerned.
You guys taking good notes here? Yeah.
Along with the restrooms and maybe the kitchen with the park. As far as the building, I like concept 3, with the exception of I think it needs to be 2-story. And if possible, to have the drive-through on the west side.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in with either things they agree with Commissioner Farnsworth or break
Well,
away?
that's good.
Yeah.
We went over, you're talking about pushing the little drive-through here.
If that's possible.
If that's possible, that's a good check and balance. We already did that. 2-story for sure. Is the road a definite or no definite? What's the deal with 254?
We can do what we want
Do
to.
what we want to with it.
So, and yeah, I think that 284 was sort of the idea that will slow down. Wait a minute, what if we shut that road down? That gives us a lot more parking possibilities, those kinds of things. So we can leave it the way it is and leave Berry Park the way it is, and just think about this site.
I think my question would be, as the concept comes to life, is this going to be a future plan? This whole model, is this a future plan for expansion? Instead of a one shot, one kill type, we're going to do in other words, we're going to shut the road down, make parking and build the building all at one time?
Yes, that part, correct.
That is,
Right.
okay. I like the multi-model,
The pedestrian corridor.
but there, I do like that.
I like that too.
That's a pretty
Yeah.
cool concept with 2 levels,
Okay.
which Commissioner Farnsworth already spoke of. Some way of, is the multimodal covered?
It can be.
It can be. I think that'd be a good thing to look at, because that's what will give us our covered
Yeah.
distance for,
At least partially.
Partially.
You want to be able to get from point A to point B
well, mainly
undercover.
from wherever, if we keep the drive-through where it's at, from there back toward the parking lot should be covered.
Okay.
Would be a nice, just
Touch.
joins them together.
Right.
Agreed.
Just be able to go from one building to the other
Yeah.
without getting wet in a rain event.
So anyway, that's just some of the,
All good ideas.
All right. Commissioner Coleman or Maison, You agree, disagree?
I agree. I like Coleman's idea. I'm sorry, Clark's idea. But
Well, it's all good.
I like Clark's idea.
All right, we can anyway.
Y'all both look alike.
Thank you.
But I was kind of like thinking about leaving 254th open, only because it's a I don't know. You know, you got that business that's right there at the corner, AT&T, and you do also have those residents that are back on the left hand side, which is that lot we just sold to Paps, and you would leave them with just one way of getting out of there, which would be 255th. So, I don't know, I think we could still do the same concept that Clark mentioned and keep 254th open.
They'll only be able to go out through 255th anyway, because that's gonna be a one-way street, so they have to turn.
You might prefer staff?
Yeah.
Well, that's if you don't, that's if you close, block the road off.
No, like when it's two ways that way, if I'm here.
Oh,
at
you mean
18,
with the new,
I'd have to go
Oh,
that
okay.
way
okay,
to get around that way.
with the new,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay then.
it becomes a
So
one.
if I'm the Tates, I'll come out here
And
and
then-
back that way, and I can either go that way to come this way, or come that way
Go
to
that
go
way,
that
go that
way.
way. Okay, all right, well
Yeah.
then, I like Clark's concept. The drive-through, I think that's perfect with the multimodal pedestrian partially covered. I mean,
Okay.
Covered corridor.
yep.
Commissioner Coleman, you like it? You got anything else you want to add?
I
Something
want
you
them to bring,
disagree with?
I want them to bring a fourth concept to me.
Okay. Underground, City Hall.
No, Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Farnsworth,
Covered
they
it.
stole the show and covered it all. I think the drive-through, if it's possible, it's where it's simple. I guess people are coming down 26. If it was on the west between us and the church, would be the best way to do that. Where's that? Right there.
That's the west side, that's where Monty's.
Yeah,
that's where
that's what we're
Commissioner
talking about.
Bart, yeah.
Yeah, if it's
possible.
if it's possible.
Good job.
Yeah, but I'm good.
Okay.
Mr. Mason?
Mr. Jones, so the only I keep going back to the kitchen and restroom deal, because it seems like with the pedestrian corridor, which is where, you know, a lot of activity is going to be in the plaza, there's going to be a lot of activity there. You got it so close to the park pavilion. Well, the only thing that's possibly going to be going on there is the festival, correct? And maybe some other stuff. But majority of your foot traffic is going to be closer to the building. So is there any way to put those restrooms a little closer?
Well, you know,
Well, in the downtown environment, we're gonna walk around here, it ain't but a hop, skip, and a jump.
And not for
Yeah.
someone that's
Yeah.
what do you call it?
I mean,
A wheelchair. What do you call
it's,
it?
yeah.
Handicap. Yeah, that's an issue.
I mean,
It ain't that far.
when it comes to the, I mean, I've been sitting here thinking about the bathrooms, and you know, if you're at a festival, 1906 is going to be open and serving you. The Tap House is going to be open and serving you. Sycamore.
You see it a lot of times. That happens.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's something that we definitely need to think about, but I would venture to guess that that's probably something we wouldn't pull the trigger on for quite some time. You know, it would be we've set aside space to build a kitchen if this really truly becomes, you know, when we're doing stuff down there once a month, then I think it's probably worth it. But right now the farmers market is growing, but it's pretty small, and we've got. And you think they do? Yeah, I mean, I think eventually they will as well.
When we have our
I think-
Christmas event and stuff.
Right.
I think public restrooms is probably a higher priority than kitchen.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
I
Yeah.
think that the kitchen may, as we get into design and we really start working on what's happening in the municipal building, the kitchen may just go by the way, because as I see events happening, no one does it, well, and we have an expert in our presence. No one's really doing a lot of preparation in a kitchen a caterer may be outside smoking, but most of the other food is pre-prepared, and what we do in the kitchen now is just heat warm types of things. So I think that we may be fine with renovation of our existing kitchen to move it from a cooking kitchen to a warming type kitchen. Restroom, both for the public, for any outdoor event, and really, if you get right down to it, the municipal building could be considered to be tight on restroom space if you get it to capacity. It's men's and women's are one-seaters, and the nature of that building make it difficult to make it any different.
Somebody had a question for Mr. Jones.
The restrooms used to be outside of the municipal building before, are they not all?
So when
Aren't
you,
all the restrooms
no.
back in your day outside?
He's talking about the landscaping.
Were they outside?
They're out there behind the building.
Oh, yeah, I think I know. Right, yeah. Okay.
That's actually where I had envisioned it. Mentioning that it's the first time that we've seen the kitchen and the restrooms. Probably the very first meeting I had with Howard and Barnett, they talked about the whole campus. We need to look at it holistically, and they talked about these restrooms and kitchen for the municipal building, and we didn't talk about location. So I've never seen them where they're proposing tonight, but in my head, there's that little cove right behind the existing kitchen, and that's just where I imagined that we were talking about the whole time. I thought it was interesting to see the different places they've showed up in this presentation.
Could those restrooms behind the municipal building be expanded to,
I believe there's room in there to do that, but I think, we have to get into the details of it all to see exactly where the roadway may go through to prove that out. But I think there's probably, back in that area is probably 12 feet wide, 15 feet wide. If we can design into that type of a footprint, I think you could hug them right up against the back wall.
and they already have water?
And sewer's right there, I think, I heard.
Yeah. Did somebody have a question for Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I was the only, I had asked them if they could move the restrooms closer.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor, if you would indulge me, just to chime in on the city manager's point, whether it's a kitchen or whatnot, the restrooms are definitely important. We've got plans for renovations to the inside of the municipal building. Part of that process, like you said, the restrooms are limited inside, and the way it's set up now, all the storage for the event functions, the tables, the chairs and whatnot, impede that and make it where it's hard to use the building for what it's intended. So whether it's a kitchen or whatnot, as part of looking at it as a holistic approach, we need to think about restrooms to expand on that, and storage for the tables, the chairs, the things that go with the rental of the building. That area is a likely candidate for that, as long as we have enough access to stay away from the gravity sewer line through there.
When it comes to public restrooms, I just want to make sure, some of this is out of our control, but I want to think about lighting, and I want to think about visibility and safety, because those also become places that attacks can happen, So part of me likes sticking it behind the municipal building because it's a good spot. Part of me thinks that may be sort of a hidden place that would encourage.
If you're at the tap house, they're in direct line.
They're in direct line of the tap house.
Well,
That's right.
it all depends on your intent. I understand the commission at an open public park wants to ensure that restrooms are available all the time. But in my mind, and I may be in error, these restrooms would more be tied to the rental of the building or facilitate an organized festival. So they may not be restrooms that you would consider having open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're tied to, there's a festival, there's a rental of the building. As the building's open, the restrooms are opened. As the building's closed, the restroom is closed.
My only thought, I think the commission has done a good job, and I agree with just about everything they've said. I guess I'm having a hard time seeing an attractive drive-through. So, if we put it on the west side, all of the eastbound traffic, that's visibly what they see as they go by. I think that's also what the First Baptist Church, now that's their view when they're parking and they're doing their stuff outside in the back, that's what they're looking at. If it's not, if it is possible, we need to see what that would look like. if it's not spatially possible, then I might recommend moving that building west and moving more parking in the center, and seeing what that looked like. But that's the only other thought I have.
I think you're gonna see definitely once you do this two-story building,
Yeah.
see the footprint.
And just a reminder, the commission has expressed interest in our having a conversation with First Baptist Church to see about a cooperative relationship with them and utilizing their parking lot for overflow parking. If they enter into a long-term lease where the city improves the parking lot and is reserved for church use on Sunday and Wednesday evenings, but it's available to the public the rest of the week.
Okay, move that house behind the building, is there a possibility
Agree.
of acquiring that for parking?
I haven't heard him say anything about being willing to sell it, but I think what Mike's talking about is just working out a deal where we pave it and improve it, and we get it except for Sunday and Wednesday night. They may be willing to sell us the dirt. I don't know. Do you know anything about that, Miss Judy? Microphone on.
Sorry. I don't know about the house, but I know that when this city hall was built, we had an understanding many years ago with the First Baptist Church that they could use our parking lot on Sundays, and we could have
theirs.
overflow during the week. Now, that's been many years ago, but that was an agreement, and it was discussed in a formal meeting.
Okay. All right. How do we do on, I've lost track of the list. What do we miss?
So the biggest thing I heard that overwhelmingly you guys are leaning towards option 3 with the idea that that drive-through can be moved more towards the west. Locking down kind of where you guys feel with that. If for some reason technically we're not able to provide that drive-through on the west, does that change are we able to default to the multimodal connection through there? Or are we able to take the drive-through out from the front concept altogether?
What I'm hearing is multimodal through the center. That if the west, and I think what we should do is we should look at both of those options. We should look at the west, and we should look at in this multimodal in the center. We're down a commissioner right now, so I think those would be in terms of the drive-through. Those would be the two ideas I'd bring forth. Let everybody sleep on it.
And then in general, everyone is in favor of closing down to 54. You were saying at first no, but then possibly. Okay. So then coming in with some sort of park concept that provides restroom access to the plaza as well. Another thing that I would point out to, kind of going on the idea that these will not be 24/7 restrooms, the actual building could be designed in such a way that you could provide limited use access during festival events to bathrooms, so they're easily accessible, so it's more centrally located, and you can have the outdoor bathrooms as well. So you have the opportunity to high capacity functions, use both, lower capacity if it's just an outdoor festival, lock up one building, use the outdoor, or vice versa if you're using the plaza more, so it gives you some variation.
So we're nixing the outhouse idea. The outhouse is off. We're not just going to go old school and just dig a hole in the ground. Little half moon. You wanted that. You wanted the outhouse. All right. That's the cheapest. I got there with a shovel myself. Okay. Jeff Jones.
Mr. Mayor, just to go back to what Howard said earlier, when you look at that white block, you were approximating 6,000 square foot. So as far as drive aisle and whatnot, you have a lot of opportunity to get a drive-through in there, configure it with some contour. He's not taking in the right-of-way, and you're not building right up to the right-of-way. So you have a lot of opportunity for landscaping and making that attractive and kind of blinding off the drive-through look from the church and possibly even your eastbound 26 traffic.
If we had a good architect that knew how to do that, we do.
Okay. Anything else that you think you got enough to take a good chunk out of this and bring it back.
No, I think we have good, clear direction that we can take and start digging into the actual layout of the building based off of what you guys have said tonight.
Okay, and then where do we go from here, Mr. Manager? What's the next step in this process? We're gonna have another workshop site plan, or the next workshop is gonna be, this is our best guess site plan, and here are some potential renderings, looks, feels. Yeah,
Mr.
another
Mayor,
workshop.
I think that we could show our best understanding of the site plan at the next workshop. The next and final workshop to kind of close out this particular process is kind of going to focus more on the building and the building layout, get those functions right. There's a big question as what are we going to do with this building and how are we going to integrate it. Recent conversations is that maybe this building could serve as office space for elected officials, both ours, potentially state legislators, or a federal congressperson, maybe some of the county offices. What? Help me out, Dallas. What do we? Yeah, thank you. Constitutional officers might have an office out this way, and try to make this a really nice building, but have some commonality in the function of it. I don't say we're locked in on that, but at least that's maybe in staff's mind that's the leading candidate. So we'll try to flesh all that stuff out at the next meeting, and then we'll kind of wrap up conceptual design. And then once we get into the next fiscal year, we'll start working on detailed designs where we'll start preparing drawings.
Mr. Mayor, Mike, what is the square footage that we're looking at for this building with the two-story? Has there been a max or minimum or anything?
The new addition, we're planning on the first phase being 12,000 square feet, 2 stories, with the opportunity of adding additional space as it grows.
And
We could.
this space is 3,500 square feet. So I think if
Each
we,
floor would be double.
well, this building will be,
35?
yeah, this building is going to stay one story.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'll be 12,000 plus 3,200 renovated here. And I would tell you that presses our budget for what has been reported as our budget. So I think that we couldn't afford to build more than 12,000 unless we greatly revised our budget.
Well, I was just wondering, when you say tax collector's
and-
office and different things like that, do we have the
Well-
scale that we could help maybe get them in here to rent?
And I don't think the manager's talking about necessarily renting. I think we were thinking it would be to everyone's benefit to just provide, say, hey, representative, you know, we'd love to have you right here at our beck and call, just be able to walk down the hall. Here's an office space.
Well, when they traditionally do rent space. And so I think that the key for us is you know, the rental is what your typical market is. Like Representative Kamick indicated to me that she has a stipend for office rental, and
I
that
think like a driver's license office, a tax collector's office, something in that nature, do they
we, as
fund
much
their own
as
building on our space, rent from us?
that if we charge them anything, it would be rental. It wouldn't be that they fund their part of the capital. They'd say
They'd be renting.
yeah, your typical rental's $5 a square foot, and we agree to do that.
Okay, we'll have
And in what we've talked about tonight, phasing is still an opportunity,
Yes, on all 3 options, you have ability to phase.
because that may have some budgetary ramifications there. So we're ready to do this, is what we want, but phase 1 first.
I will say, based off of some of the site visits we've done and experience, it will be better to go 2 stories to begin with and then add through versus trying to add a second story on at a separate time.
Absolutely.
Okay? Any,
And Mr. Mayor, Jamie had indicated that we've made 2 site visits, and as important as they are in conceptual design, though just as important are in real design, I think we have at least 2 more. But you know, we're working under the direction of the commission. I know we can't get all 6 of you into a building at one time without all the sunshine stuff that comes with it. But I encourage you to, if you have some time, walk around somebody's city hall or get with me and I'll make you appointments. I think I can make you an appointment with the city hall of what not to do. We've toured that facility, and we've seen some are more elaborate, and I don't know that you know, when I go through Newberry, that anybody wants Taj Mahal and want nice, want well done, but over the top elaborate. So I think it's beneficial if our elected officials spend some time paying attention to city halls, what they like about them and what they don't, and as we get into the design process, we can start identifying those things that we want to incorporate in Newberry City Hall.
Yeah, and at some point, Mike, I'd like to have some thought about this, because when I think about the layout of this building, I don't find it very conducive to the public. You know, you got to walk through the city clerk's office to get to anyone else. There's no way to get to the city manager without walking through the entire thing. You know, it's an odd layout internally, and I want to. It seems almost like wherever you put the drive-through, that kind of dictates where everything else goes, because there's only some services that are going to be at the drive-through. So I'm sure that a commission left it, you know, to somebody to lay out this building and didn't ask a whole lot of those kind of questions, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity. Blocks on a screen is great, but then I want to think about what is the flow for the public, and how does the public access different folks in a way that's conducive.
I think our team have a lot of expertise in that. Every time we've met with them, they speak about the areas that are directly public facing, you know, kind of a one-stop, so that, you know, if you come in and deal with the building department and the utility department, and, you know, who are the departments that spend the most face time with the public, well, let's put them together in kind of a easy to get to fashion. You want city commission chambers and those same types of things. So that's, I think, a primary driver for city halls. I know that tends to be the primary focus from our design team. So I think we'll probably discuss a little bit that at our next meeting. But as we get in early on into final design, that is the primary conversation to have.
Mr. Jones, final thoughts?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we're rapidly getting to the point in this part of the process and at the tail end of it before we get into the final design, where it becomes necessary to not talk in approximates and get a little more exacts, you know, exact locations of existing utilities, you know, survey, you know, topography, stormwater, and those things. And while all of these approaches are scalable for the budget and buildable in phases, I would strongly encourage the commission, while you may consider constructing in phases, go ahead and get your master plan set as to what you want the ultimate build out to look like, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, whatever. So you don't have to unconstruct anything when you go from one phase to another phase.
Agreed. Okay. Any final thoughts, sir? Okay. Any final thoughts from the commission on this? Commissioner Coleman?
Mike knew that was a good hire right there.
Absolutely.
I agree.
I agree with you 100%.
I agree. Okay, thank you, sir. That'll bring our agenda item to a close. City Manager, you have any comments tonight?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, I do not.
Madam Clerk? All right, thank you. Commissioner Coleman?
No.
Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Mazon?
Well, when is our next workshop?
Thursday,
What time is it?
6.
See, that's what I thought.
We- It's at 6.
No, I thought we moved it to 7. I thought we moved it to 7.
Well, that was gonna be my only, my only comment. Commissioner Mazon can't get here at 6. So,
Man, give me a hug and just move it to 7. Give me a hug, move to 7.
so does anyone object to having a 7 o'clock?
How late we will be here?
You don't want to be here with us?
It's
I
another,
love you, man.
Thursday is the,
And brief Commissioner Mazon?
Oh, gee, it's okay. Let's keep it at 6, and I'll see you guys.
Well, we'll get him brief.
yeah, I mean, Thursday is,
Stuff to get started.
right, hang on one second. We got too many conversations. I can't hear everybody at one time. Okay, Thursday is the broken workshop we had in two, right? Where we talked about our revenues, and then we were gonna do conversations about, the road paving project here, connectivity project there, City Hall, how we pay for it, right? We've had a lot of good conversation, now we get to talk about how we pay for it, and connecting 15th to 337. So, it can be an extensive conversation because we have 4 projects that we need to discuss. So I would probably say, because it could take some time, that 6 o'clock would be better, just because that gives us time. I think you could come at 7, no one would be offended if you walk in the door at 7. And Thursday, we're gonna put tables down here in the middle. We're gonna try to create a much more informal atmosphere to have that kind of conversation so that people feel a little bit more at comfort saying, you know, whatever's on their brain. It'll also be recorded, so anything that we've missed, you know, like Commissioner Martin will watch tonight's conversation because he's not here, so he'll watch the recording of it, those kinds of things. And then as we move forward, we'll try to make sure that we are accommodating everyone's bedtime schedule and work time schedule. Yeah. Okay. And then Commissioner Mazon got my only comment. So Thursday, 6, tables out here, right? Maybe we'll try to get some snacks or something and encourage some collegiate activity and get those comments flowing. And that's my only comment for tonight. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming and sitting through. I think it was a productive conversation, and we are adjourned.